Hi guys, it's KidsCast Cilus here. Oh, there's my mask. Last time we did chapter 1. Now moving on to chapter 2, I have a word with chaos. Would you be surprised to learn that things went badly from there? I didn't think so. Our first casualties were Felix's penguins. The cryosynths blew fire at the unfortunate birds, and they melted into puddles of water. No, Felix cried. The room rumbled, much stronger this time. Khufu screamed and jumped on Carter's head, knocking him to the floor. Under different circumstances, that would have been funny, but I realised Khufu had just saved my brother's life. Where Carter had been standing, the floor dissolved, marble tiles crumbling as if broken apart by an invisible jackhammer. The arena of disruption snaked across the room, destroying everything in its path, sucking artifacts into the ground, chewing them to bits. Yes, snaked was the right word. The destruction snivered exactly like a serpent, heading straight for the back wall in the Book of Overcoming Apophis. "Scroll!" I shouted. No one seemed to hear. Carter was still on the floor trying to prise Khufu off his head. Felix knelt in shock at the puddles of his penguins, while Walton up Alyssa tried to pull him away from the fiery cryosynths. I slipped my wand from my belt and shouted the first word of power that came to mind. Droa! Golden hieroglyphs, the command for boundary, blazed in the air. A wall of light flashed between the display case and the advancing line of destruction. I'd often used this spell to separate quarrelling initiates or protect the snack cupboard from late-night nom-nom raids, but I'd never tried it for something so important. As soon as the invisible jackhammer reached my shield, and the spell began to fall apart. The disturbance spread up the wall of light, shaking it to pieces. I tried to concentrate, but a much more powerful force, chaos itself, was working against me, invading my mind and scattering my magic. In a panic, I realised I couldn't let go. I was locked in a battle I couldn't win. Apophis was shredding my thoughts as easily as he shredded the floor. Walt knocked the wand out of my hands. Darkness washed over me. I slumped into Walt's arms. When my vision cleared, my hands were burnt and steaming. I was too shocked to feel the pain. The Book of Overcoming Apophis was gone. Nothing remained except a pile of rubble and a massive hole in the wall, as if a tank had smashed through. Despair threatened to close up my throat, but my friends gathered round me. Walt held me steady. Carter drew his sword. Khufu showed his fangs and barked at the cryosynths. Alyssa wrapped her arms round Felix, who was sobbing into her sleeve. He had quickly lost his courage when his penguins were taken away. "So that's it," I shouted at the cryosynths. "Burn up the scroll and run away as usual? Are you so afraid to show yourself in person?" More laughter rolled through the room. The cryosynths stood unmoving in the doorway, but figurines and jewellery rattled in display cases. With a painful creaking sound, the golden baboon statue that Khufu had been chatting up suddenly turned its head. "But I am everywhere," the serpent spoke through the statue's mouth. "I can destroy anything you value, and anyone you value." Khufu wailed in outrage. He launched himself at the baboon and knocked it over. It melted into a steaming pool of gold. A different statue came to life. A gilded wooden pharaoh with a hunting spear. Its eyes turned the colour of blood, its carved mouth a twisted smile. "Your magic is weak, Sadie Kane. Human civilization has grown old and rotten. I will swallow the sun god and plunge your world into darkness. The sea of chaos will consume you all." As if the energy was too much for it to contain, the pharaoh statue burst. Its pedestal disintegrated, and another line of evil jackhammer magic snaked across the room, churning up the floor tiles. It headed for a display against the east wall, a small golden cabinet. "Save it," said a voice inside me, probably my subconscious, or possibly the voice of Isis, my patron goddess. We'd shared thoughts so many times it was hard to be sure. I remembered what the face in the wall had told me. "Go for a golden box. That'll give you a clue about what you need." "The box!" I yelled. "Stop him!" My friend stared at me. For somewhere outside, another explosion shook the building. Chunks of plaster rained from the ceiling. "Are these children the best you could send against me?" Apophis spoke from an ivory shabty in the nearest case, a miniature sailor on a toy boat. "Walt Stone, you are the luckiest." If you survive tonight, your sickness will kill you before my great victory. You won't have to watch your world be destroyed." Walt staggered. Suddenly I was supporting him. My burnt hands hurt so badly I had to fight down a surge of nausea. The line of destruction tumbled across the floor, still heading for the golden cabinet. Alyssa thrust out her staff and barked a command. For a moment the floor stabilized, smoothing into a solid sheet of grey stone. Then new cracks appeared, and the force of chaos blasted its way through. "Brave Alyssa," the serpent said. "The earth you love will dissolve into chaos. You will have no place to stand." Alyssa's staff burst into flames. She screamed and threw it aside. "Stop it!" Felix yelled. He smashed the glass case with his staff and demolished the miniature sailor along with a dozen other shopti. Apophis's voice simply moved to a jade amulet of Isis on the nearby mannequin. "Ah, little Felix, I find you amusing. Perhaps I'll keep you as a pet, like those ridiculous birds you love. I wonder how long you'll last before your sanity crumbles." Felix threw his wand and knocked over the mannequin. The crumbling trail of chaos was now halfway to the golden cabinet. "He's after that box," I managed to say. "Save the box." Granted, it wasn't the most inspiring call to battle, but Carter seemed to understand. He jumped in front of the advancing chaos, stabbing his sword into the floor. His blade cut through the marble tile like ice cream. A blue line of magic extended to either side. Carter's own version of a force field. The line of disruption slammed against the barrier and stalled. "Poor Carter, Kane." The serpent's voice was all around us now, jumping from artifact to artifact, each one bursting from the power of chaos. "Your leadership is doomed. Everything you tried to build will crumble. You will lose the ones you love most." Carter's blue defensive line began to flicker. If I didn't help him quickly— "Apophis!" I yelled. "Why wait to destroy me? Do it now, you overgrown rat snake!" A hiss echoed through the room. Perhaps I should mention that one of my many talents is making people angry. Apparently it worked on snakes too. The floor settled. Carter released his shielding spell and almost collapsed. Khufu, bless his baboon wits, leaped to the golden cabinet, picked it up and bounded off with it. When Apophis spoke again, his voice hardened with anger. "Very well, Sadie Kane. It's time to die." The two round-headed sphinxes stirred, their mouths glowing with flames. Then they lunged straight at me. Fortunately, one of them slipped in a puddle of penguin water and skidded to the left. The other would have ripped my throat out had it not been tackled by a tiny camel. Yes, an actual full-size camel. If you find that confusing, just think how the cryo-sphinx must have felt. Where did the camel come from, you ask? I may have mentioned Walt's collection of amulets. 2 of them summoned disgusting camels. I'd met them before, so I was less than excited when a ton of dromedary flesh flew across my line of sight, ploughed into the Sphinx and collapsed on top of it. The Sphinx growled in outrage as it tried to free itself. The camel grunted and farted. "Hindenburg," I said. Only one camel could possibly fart that badly. "Walt, why in the world—" "Sorry," he yelled. "Wrong amulet." The technique worked, at any rate. The camel wasn't much of a fighter, but it was quite heavy and clumsy. The cryo-sphinx snarled and clawed the floor, trying unsuccessfully to push the camel off, but Hindenburg just played his legs, made alarmed honking sounds, and kept farting. I moved to Walt's side and tried to get my bearings. The room was quite literally in chaos. Tendrils of red lightning arced between exhibits. The floor was crumbling, the walls cracked. Artifacts were coming to life and attacking my friends. Carter fended off the other cryo-sphinx, stabbing it with his khopesh, but the monster parried his strikes with its horns and breathed fire. Felix was surrounded by a tornado of canopic jars that pummeled him from every direction as he swatted them with his staff. An army of tiny shabtus had surrounded Alyssa, who was chanting desperately, using her earth magic to keep the room in one piece. The statue of Anubis chased Khufu around the room, smashing things with its fist as a brave baboon cradled the golden cabinet. All around us the power of chaos grew. I felt it in my ears like a coming storm. The presence of Apophis was shaking apart the entire museum. How could I help all my friends at once, protect that gold cabinet, and keep the museum from collapsing on top of us. Sadie, Walt prompted, what's the plan? The first Crysphinx finally pushed Hindenburg off his back. It turned and blew fire at the camel, which let loose one final fart and shrank back into a harmless gold amulet. Then the Crysphinx turned towards me. It did not look pleased. Walt, I said, guard me. Sure, he eyed the Crysphinx uncertainly. What'll you do, Walt? Good question, I thought. We have to protect that cabinet, I said. It's some sort of clue. We have to restore Matt, or this building will implode and we'll all die. How do we restore Matt? Instead of answering, I concentrated. I lowered my vision into the duat. It's hard to describe what it's like to experience the world on so many levels at once. It's a bit like looking through 3D glasses and seeing hazy, colourful auras around things, except constantly shifting. Magicians have to be careful when they look into the duat. Best case scenario, you'll get mildly nauseous. Worst case scenario, your brain will explode. In the duat, the room was filled with the writhing claws of a giant red snake, the magic of Apophis slowly expanding, encircling my friend. Yeah. I almost lost my concentration along with my dinner. Isis, I called. A little help? The goddess's strength surged through me. I stretched out my senses and saw my brother battling the Crysphinx. Standing in Curtis' place was the warrior god Horus, his sword blazing with light. Swirling around Felix, the canopic jars were the hearts of evil spirits, shadowy figures that clawed and snapped at our young friend. Though Felix had a surprisingly powerful aura in the duat, his vivid purple glow seemed to keep the spirits at bay. Alyssa was surrounded by a dust storm in the shape of a giant man. As she chanted, Jed the earth god lifted his arms and held up the ceiling. The Shabti army surrounding her blazed like a wildfire. Khufu looked no different in the duat, but as he leaped around the room, evading the Anubis statue, the golden cabinet he was carrying flapped open. Inside was pure darkness, as if it were full of octopusy ink. I wasn't sure what that meant, but then I looked at Walt and gasped. In the duat, he was shrouded with flickering grey linen, mummy cloth. His flesh was transparent. His bones were luminous, as if he was a living X-ray. His curse, I thought. He's marked for death. Even worse, the Crysphinx facing him was the centre of the chaos storm. Tendrils of red lightning arced from its body, its round face changed into the head of Apophis, with yellow serpentine eyes and dripping fangs. It lunged at Walt, but before it could strike, Walt threw an amulet. Golden chains exploded in the monster's face, wrapping round its snout. The Crysphinx stumbled and thrashed like a dog in a muzzle. Sadie, it's all right. Walt's voice sounded deeper and more confident, as if he were older in the duat. Speak your spell. Hurry. The Crysphinx flexed its jaws. The gold chains groaned. The other Crysphinx had backed Carter against a wall. Felix was on his knees, his purple aura failing in the swirl of dark spirits. Alyssa was losing her battle against the crumbling room as chunks of the ceiling fell around her. The Anubis statue grabbed Goofy's tail and held him upside down, while the baboon howled and wrapped his arms around the gold cabinet. Now or never, I had to restore order. I channeled the power of Isis, drawing so deeply on my own magic reserves that I could feel my soul start to burn. I forced myself to focus, and I spoke the most powerful of all divine words. Matt. The hieroglyph burned in front of me, small and bright, like a miniature sun. Good, Walt said. Keep at it. Somehow he'd managed to pull in the chains and grab the Sphinx's snout. While the creature bore down on him with all its force, Walt's strange grey aura was spreading across the monster's body like an infection. The Crysphinx hissed and writhed. I caught a whiff of decay like the air from a tomb, so strong that I almost lost my concentration. Sadie, Walt urged, maintain the spell. I focused on the hieroglyph. I channeled all my energy into that symbol for order and creation. The words shone brighter. The coils of the serpent burned away like fog in sunlight. The two Crysphinxes crumbled to dust. The canopic jars fell and shattered. The Anubis statue dropped Khufu on his head. The army of Shavti froze around Alyssa, and her earth magic spread through the room, sealing cracks and shoring up walls. I felt Apophis retreating deeper into the duat, hissing in anger. Then I promptly collapsed. I told you she could do it, said a kindly voice. My mother's voice. But of course that was impossible. She was dead. which meant I spoke with her only occasionally, and only in the underworld. My vision returned, hazy and dim. 2 women hovered over me. One was my mum, her blonde hair clipped back, her deep blue eyes sparkling with pride. She was transparent, as ghosts tend to be, but her voice was warm and very much alive. It isn't the end yet, Sadie. You must carry on. Next to her stood Isis in her white silky gown, her wings of rainbow light flickering behind her. Her hair was glossy black, woven with strands of diamonds. Her face was as beautiful as my mum's, but more queenly, less warm. Don't misunderstand. I knew from sharing Isis's thoughts that she cared for me in her own way, but gods are not human. They have trouble thinking of us as more than useful tools or cute pets. To gods, a human lifespan doesn't seem much longer than that of the average gerbil. I would not have believed it, Isis said. The last magician to summon Matt was Hatshepsut herself, and even she could only do it while wearing a fake beard. I had no idea what that meant. I decided I didn't want to know. I tried to move but couldn't. I felt as if I were floating at the bottom of a bathtub, suspended in warm water. The 2 women's face rippling at me from just above the surface. Sadie, listen carefully, my mother said. Don't blame yourself for the deaths. When you make your plan, your father will object. You must convince him. Tell him it's the only way to save the souls of the dead. Tell him, her expression turned grim, tell him it's the only way he'll see me again. You must succeed, my sweet. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I couldn't seem to speak. Isis touched my forehead. Her fingers were as cold as snow. We must not tax her any further. Farewell for now, Sadie. The time rapidly approaches when we must join together again. You are strong, even stronger than your mother. Together we will rule the world. You mean together we will defeat Apophis? My mother corrected. Of course, Isis said. That's what I meant. Their faces blurred together. They spoke in a single voice. I love you. A blizzard swept across my eyes. My surroundings changed, and I was standing in a dark graveyard with Anubis. Not the musty old jackal-headed god as he appeared in Egyptian tomb art, but Anubis as I usually saw him. A teenage boy with warm brown eyes, tousled black hair, and a face that was ridiculously annoyingly gorgeous. I mean, please, being a god, he had an unfair advantage. He could look like anything he wanted. Why did he always have to appear in this form that twisted my insides to pretzels? Wonderful, I managed to say. If you're here, I must be dead. Anubis smiled. Not dead, though you came close. That was a risky move. A burning sensation started in my face and worked its way down my neck. I wasn't sure if it was embarrassment, anger, or delight at seeing him. Where have you been? I demanded. 6 months and not a word. His smile melted. They wouldn't let me see you. Who wouldn't let you? There are rules, he said. Even now they're watching. But you're close enough to death that I can manage a few moments. I need to tell you, you have the right idea. Look at what isn't there. It's the only way you could survive. Right, I grumbled. Thanks for not speaking in riddles. The warm sensation reached my heart. It began to beat, and suddenly I realized I'd been without a heartbeat since I passed out. That probably wasn't good. Sadie, there's something else. Anubis' voice became watery. His image began to fade. I need to tell you. Tell me in person, I said. None of this death vision nonsense. I can't. They won't let me. You still sound like a little boy. You're a god, aren't you? You can do what you like. Anger smouldered in his eyes. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. I'd forgotten how irritating you are. I'll try to visit, briefly. We have something to discuss. He reached out and brushed the side of my face. You're waking now. Goodbye, Sadie. Don't leave. I grasped his hand and held it against my cheek. The warmth spread throughout my body. Anubis faded away. My eyes flew open. Don't leave! My burnt hands were bandaged, and I was gripping a hairy baboon paw. Khufu looked down at me, rather confused. Ah? Oh, fab. I was flirting with a monkey. I sat up groggily. Carter and our friends gathered around me. The room hadn't collapsed, but the entire King Tut exhibit was in ruins. I had a feeling we would not be invited to join the Friends of the Dallas Museum anytime soon. What happened? I stammered. How long? You were dead for 2 minutes, Carter said, his voice shaky. I mean, no heartbeat, Sadie. I was afraid. He choked up. Poor boy, he really would have been lost without me. Ouch, Carter, don't pinch. You summoned Matt, Alyssa said in amazement. That's, impossible. I suppose it was rather impressive. Using divine words to create an object like an animal or a chair or sword. That's hard enough. Summoning an element like fire or water is even trickier, but summoning a concept, like order, that's just not done. At the moment, however, I was in too much pain to appreciate my own amazingness. I felt as if I'd just summoned an anvil and dropped it on my head. Lucky try, I said. What about the golden cabinet? Ah! Kufu gestured proudly to the gilded box, which sat nearby, safe and sound. Good baboon, I said. Extra Cheerios for you tonight. Walt frowned. But the book of overcoming Apophis was destroyed. How will the cabinet help us? You said it was some kind of clue. I found it hard to look at Walt without feeling guilty. My heart had been torn between him and Anubis for months now, and it just wasn't fair of Anubis to pop into my dreams, looking all hot and immortal, when poor Walt was risking his life to protect me and getting weaker by the day. I remembered how he had looked in the duat, his ghostly grey mummy linen. No, I couldn't think about that. I forced myself to concentrate on the golden cabinet. Look at what isn't there, Anubis had said. Stupid gods and their stupid riddles. The face in the wall, Uncle Vinny. He had told me this box would give us a hint about how to defeat Apophis, if I was smart enough to understand it. I'm not sure what it means yet, I admitted. If the Texans let us take it back to Brooklyn House. A horrible realization settled over me. There were no more sounds of explosions outside, just eerie silence. The Texans, I yelped. What's happened to them? Felix and Alyssa bolted for the exit. Carter and Walt helped me up to my feet, and we ran after them. The guards had all disappeared from their stations. We reached the museum foyer, and I saw columns of white smoke outside the glass walls, rising from the sculpture garden. No, I murmured. No, no. We tore across the street. The well-kept lawn was now a crater as big as an Olympic pool. The bottom was littered with melted metal sculptures and chunks of stone. Tunnels that had once led into the 51st Gnome's headquarters had collapsed like a giant anthill some bully had stepped on. Around the rim of the crater were bits of smoking evening wear, smashed plates of tacos, broken champagne glasses, and shattered staffs of magicians. Don't blame yourself for the deaths, my mother had said. I moved in a daze to the remains of the patio. Half the concrete slab had cracked and slid into the crater. A charred fiddle lay in the mud next to a gleaming bit of silver. Carter stood next to me. We should search, he said. There might be survivors. I swallowed back a sob. I wasn't sure how, but I sensed the truth with absolute certainty. There aren't any. The Texas magicians had welcomed us and supported us. J.D. Grissom had shaken my hand and wished me luck before running off to save his wife. But we'd seen the work of Apophis in other gnomes. Carter had warned J.D. The Serpents' minions don't leave any survivors. I knelt down and picked up the gleaming piece of silver, a half-melted Lone Star belt buckle. They're dead, I said. All of them. Well, that's it for this video. That was chapter 2. Oh, there's my mask again. Amazing. Anyway, I will see you next time on chapter